You're all very welcome to this session on speech contests. In District 71, we run 4 contests during the year. And between now and the end of November, we'll be running the humorous speech contest and the table topics contest. This session is organised to give you an update on the changes that were made to the speech contest rulebook, and also to discuss the teams that you will need to put in place for your contests. Our presenters this evening are the district's chief judges, who are Asma Riaz, who's the Division E Director, and John Spillane, who's the Division B Director. And I'd like to thank them for the work that they've done in preparing for this evening's session. I'd like to pass over to our first presenter this evening, who is Asma Riaz, one of the chief judges and Division E Director. Please welcome Asma.
Thank you, Brenda. Now I'm going to go to the next slide. So first of all, I'm going to show you where the links are to the kit. So you've got some fun areas and some additional resources. You've got the links here, which your slides you'll have afterwards, so you can easily get to these areas. So the speech content material, and they are free to download as digital content, so you don't have to use the paper format any longer. But you can just click on the links and it'll take you, the first one will take you to the actual speech contest kit. And then you will have the evaluation speech kit, table topics, international speech, humorous speech. And I've also added a link here directly to the speech contest rulebook. Whenever you download the kit, you will also get the speech contest rulebook with that as well. And then the next slide. So we also have a Zoom Academy who can support for area contests and above. So if you need support running your contest on Zoom, please email the Zoom events coordinators, and they will hopefully assign you the Zoom master. We've also got some frequently asked questions about speech contests, some tutorials, and some other documents which will be really useful for you to have a quick skim through before you start running your contest. So I'm going to go over the changes in the rule books, and there is quite a few, so stay with me and we will go through. And if you've got any questions, put them in chat, and Brenda and I and John will have a look at these later and see what we can answer at the end. Now, the first change in the rule book is under speech contest policy, and the change here is that non-English contests are optional and may be conducted as either one of the contests that we normally have, which is evaluation, humorous, table topics, and we've included tall tales. It does say that a non-English contest using the rules of the international speech contest must be titled using the name of the language. And it's giving you an example, for example, Chinese speech contest. So if you want to run the contest in a different language, you must put that in front of the name of the contest. So not too much of a change there. The next change is under eligibility, and here you have got, excuse me, sorry, can you hear me now? Okay. So you've got a few changes under eligibility, and the first one is that district officers or candidates which are elected positions for the term beginning for the upcoming July the 1st, and you are eligible to compete, and that's for elected positions. I think before in the previous rule book, it said that it was those who were campaigning, but this one's been changed for elected positions. Then you've got 7.7. So for members who are serving contest officials or presenter roles that meet the following criteria. So this one hasn't changed much. It's just a slight wording change. So voting judge, tie-break judge, at the same contest type in which they would be competing beyond club level in any district. Your timers, like all your contest officials, if you are a presenter of an educational session or a contest chair for a contest Toastmaster on the event committee, whether it's held at area, division or district, as well as international convention, you are ineligible to compete. And then we have a change under D.3.1. So members, this might be the one that is affecting us the most. Excuse me for 1 second. So members who join Toastmasters prior to the rollout of pathways in their region can apply speeches from the Competent Communicator Manual to be eligible for judging. And for F, candidates which are elected district leader positions for the term beginning in the subsequent July the 1st are ineligible as well to serve as a test speaker at the area, division or district. So just be wary of that one when you're picking test speakers for your evaluation contest. So here I've highlighted what the change is here on the selection sequence. So if a club contest is held, it must comply with the rule book. But for contest must be held at the area, division and district. So you can't just nominate a speaker to go forward to represent the area, division or the district. They've added number 5 in, so occasionally a contest will be held with only one contestant. Here, you still must hold a contest and make sure that they are within the time, the originality and eligibility requirements, and then they can move forward to the next phase. We've got some changes under the general procedure, so the winners must be announced prior to the end of the event. So previously this used to was phrased as winners must be announced prior to the end of the contest, I think, rather than end of the event. And then we've got A and B, which is just an addition as well. So if the contest is the only event taking place, winners must be announced before the contest adjourns. So you can't withhold who the winners are and then announce it a week or two later. You must announce it at that event if that's the only event that's taking place. But if multiple contests are taking place as part of a larger conference, the way D71 would do a larger conference at the end of the year, winners from all contests must be announced before the end of the conference or event. So whether that's spaced over 2 days, 3 days, 2 weeks, they'll do that announcement at the end of the event. And then there's number 4. So if there are multiple contests taking place at one event, each contest must be officially adjourned prior to the beginning of the next contest. Even if the winners have not been announced, you must officially adjourn that contest. So moving on to protests and disqualifications. Now here you may get some people who do put in a protest. It is still the same that the protest must be lodged to the chief judge or the contest chair, but this must be now prior to the contest being adjourned, not prior to the announcement of the result. Not to go too much. So the next few slides, I won't go into too much detail, only because it's a video contest and we don't do too many of video contests on their own in D71. But there are a lot of additions to this section. So if you are holding video speech contest, just have a very thorough look through this before you hold a video contest. They have, all these are all an addition to the contest rulebook. And it's really focusing more on how clear the audio must be, how you can only use one camera, you can't zoom in or zoom out. You must be able to see everyone's facial expressions. You can't use artificial lighting or, and I think, yeah, you can't edit the video either after it's been recorded. As you can see, there's another slide on this one, which means there's a lot of changes to the contest and how you would hold that contest as well. I'm going to skip to this slide. So you've got the contest briefing. So this has also been an addition. So you have to verify the presence of all contestants and the pronunciation of their names. And then you will conduct a brief informal interview with each contestant after all ballots are collected. And then you have during the contest, where each contestant selects their own speech topics. This is an addition, so it does specify that some content may be personal and it may have their own ideas, their beliefs, and the audience may consider it sensitive. I'm not convinced that that would formulate part of a protest, but it just make you aware that the audience may find some content sensitive. We've also got the addition to the judges' briefing checklist, so to instruct all judges to sit close to the contest area, just in case there's disturbance or malfunction of the technical system. Seeing as we are all going to be on Zoom this year, that might hopefully help people just to sit next to their laptops or their computers as contests are proceeding. We also had section 2 for eligibility, which the wording hadn't changed, but the numbering had, and I couldn't see it change to the previous version to this year's section. Yeah. So I may have gone a bit fast there, Brenda. Is there anything that you want me to answer now, or perhaps?
Thanks very much, Asma. There are a couple of questions in the chat. One of them is, under what circumstances can a judge or other official at the club level participate as a contestant in a club contest within a different area?
Well, it doesn't specify anything in the rule book that you can't compete in another area, but you can only compete in one area. So if you're going through 2 different clubs in 2 different areas and divisions, you can only proceed with one path, whichever club or division or area, club area or division the contestant wishes to proceed. I think there was some wording already in the rule book about if you are a contestant in your own club, then you shouldn't really judge in another club in your same area. But I will double check that one before we claim that as my final answer. And what was the other question? Members joining since rollout of Pathways must be enrolled on Pathways. Is this correct? Those who were members prior to Pathways can take part even if not registered on Pathways. Is this correct? Okay, I will double check that in the rule book while we continue with the session. Then I'll come back to it at the end.
If there are no more questions, we'll move on to John Spillane presentation. Please welcome John.
Good evening, everybody. And tonight I'm going to talk about 2 topics. One of them is about judging. And I suppose it's to point out, to try and get fair and balanced judging. And the second topic is about getting your teams together. Now, I'm going to go through this fairly quickly. I have approximately 5 minutes on each. If you have any questions, put them in the chat. And if there are any longer answers, we may have to come back to you at a later date. So judging, and I said what I'm going to talk about is why we need them, and basically about to understand the sheet a little better and how you fill in your ballot at the end. So we have multiple contests. I won't go through that again. Eligibility, we've already gone through in detail about the judging. That's not really the focus of this talk. The talk is about this. So these are the ballots. This is the humorous speech ballot. Familiar to lots of you who have been filling it in over the years. That's the table topics, the international speech contest, and the evaluation contest. And what I found when I was doing this is that we very seldom see them all together. And I found it very interesting when you actually line them up side by side like this, and you see what way the points are laid out. And it gives you a better understanding of what's expected from you as a judge when you're marking the sheets. So these represent the different sections, and each is 100%. And the one thing you'll notice is that the 3 speech contests are essentially the same in the way they mark their points, the humorous, the international, and the table topics indeed, and that the evaluation is very different. So if we look at the different sections, we look at, say, speech development, and this is about how were the ideas put together, were they structured around the purpose, and were there relevant facts and examples? And you can see here that it's very high on table topics. I presume relevant facts and examples would be specific to the, whatever you were talking about. One of the things we have to watch for in general when we're judging is that we don't judge it just on one area. And that's why we have these points to help us balance it out. But you can see on table topics, it's quite important for speech development relative to, say, the humorous speech. Effectiveness. What was the audience response? Did you understand the speech? And did it hold your attention? Again, table topics high, humorous speech and so on are a little less. There's one category, and I suppose it's done as a separate line in the humorous speech, whereas you could regard it as effectiveness and, did the audience laugh, or what was the effect on the audience? And I think they've split that out on humorous speech so that you give it special attention. Speech value, was there something thought-provoking? And I have noticed in some contests that, somebody makes a good speech and very thought-provoking, and people tend to overweigh this factor relative to the rest of the speech. So it's only 15 points in the marking. The physical, did the speaker's appearance reflect the speech? He doesn't have to be in a suit, or she doesn't have to be in a suit. They just have to reflect what the speech is about. Did they make use of the speaking area and their body language? Was their voice easily understood, and had it a good rate and volume, which is probably what I'm not doing now? Were they enthusiastic? This is their manner. I think, I'm very keen on enthusiasm in a speech. I like to see the speaker getting into it and showing confidence up there. But you can see there that it is just 10 points really, and it's got nothing in table topics. Appropriateness, was the language and choice of words appropriate? Did they use promote a clear understanding of their speech? Did the language help? Pronunciation, did it detract from the speaker? And again, you can see there that it's high on the international speech as you'd expect, less so on the humorous and table topics. And then the last section is all about the evaluations, and they're very different in the way they're marked. The analytical quality, how effective was the evaluation? Were the speaker's strengths and weaknesses analysed? Were they presented in a clear fashion? 40% of the marks are given in this area. Recommendations, and we're all told constantly about giving recommendations. 30% of the marks are given. Were they given in a helpful way? Will they benefit the speaker? It's not just about saying, you should have done this, that, and the other, but how was it imparted? The technique as well. Was the evaluator sensitive to the speaker's feelings? Did he inspire them to do better? And the summary. And you can see summary is 15%. Was there a summary? Was it positive? And again, it's one thing that we tend to do. I know we should always have a summary, but if it's not a good summary, it's still just 15%. You've got to weigh the other factors in there. So the procedure, basically, if you're a judge, you should arrive early. You should spread around the room, although there is some people saying that you should clump together, but it used to be spread around the room. You should avoid sitting near the competitors. Listen carefully to the order of speakers, because you'll probably just hear it once and slowly. Write their names on your sheets. And then there's the technique where we probably, most of you know it, but just about how you fold the sheet so that you avoid judging one person against another. So really you should be looking at the points for one person only as you're marking them, not to see that you give them the previous person 5 and this one sounds a bit better, I'll give them 6. Each is supposed to be marked on their own. And well, I was always told when I started off that there's certain things can be marked during the speech. You don't have to wait till the end mark down your points for language or physical. I suppose this is a matter of choice, but if I'm judging, I tend to mark those things during the speech, because really at the end, you've just got a minute to fill in the other things. And you do need to get to the end to give a proper assessment of the other factors. So the procedure then at the end is put your preferences down 1, 2, and 3, sign it. I've heard of numerous cases of people not signing their ballot, and it was told to me that, you know, you may vote the points and it might be 70 and 75 and so on, and then you think about it afterwards and you think, well, I actually prefer the other speaker. You're not tied to your points. It's your decision, and your points are just your guide, but they should still reflect the different sections of the speech that you've marked. And of course, the golden rule is do not discuss your vote after the contest. So I'll say that I'll finish this section by saying happy judging. Hope that you'll all participate when the opportunity arises. I'm going to go straight in now into a section on getting your team together, unless Brenda feels you want to.
John, there's one question in the chat that I'd like to clarify at this point, if that's okay.
Okay.
There's a question in relation to the contests and how they're being held this year. Clubs can hold their contest either online or in a venue. However, contests above the club level, so contests at area, division, and district level, are all being held online this year.
Okay, thank you. The next section is about getting your team together. So we all are aware of the challenges. Brenda said that we have 4 contests, but really, Brenda, you grossly underestimated that, because each division, and in my case, in Division B, we've got 4 division contests, 16 area contests, and we have 68 club contests this year. And if you multiply that by 12, you'll come up with a very big number. So we've nearly 1,000 contests to be held every year. And they can be very time consuming. If anyone has ever done it before, getting the names and the speeches is like pulling teeth, and getting people to do the various roles, test speakers and so on. And the purpose of this little chat is that I think it could all be a lot easier with a panel of trained people. And what I'm doing tonight is I'm just putting out some ideas to other divisions, and you know, it's up to them to see if they want to take them on. So the ideas basically are that at the beginning of the year, so September or so, set up a panel of people who can be called on if necessary to fill the roles that we've just seen. I would expect in any division that each club should nominate between 1 and 4 people to be on this panel. So you could have anything from, you know, 20 to 40 or 50 people on the panel. Try and get a mixture of age and gender and experience. And we're looking really for every position in a contest, the chief judge, the contest chair, even the test speaker. We want to know these in advance. And then when a person says that they're willing to be on the panel, then you ask them what roles are they comfortable in doing. So somebody might be happy to be a judge, but not a chief judge, or a contest chair, or a counter maybe, a test speaker. Who are we looking for? Well, we're looking for people who are willing to help. They're in every club, but not everybody would have the time to help. At least for this current year, a lot of it's going to be over Zoom. So, but if this thing was to progress into further years and people had to do face-to-face, obviously you'd only expect them to help out if it's reasonable for them to travel. We're either looking for people who either don't typically compete in contests or don't intend to compete this year. But if you were to compete, I mean, it's not a big deal. You just rule yourself out of certain roles. Some people can use these to fill in pathway projects. And actually, if you look at the roles, you know, contest chair and all of these other positions, they fill in very nicely with a lot of the pathway projects. So again, you can use it for that purpose. You should have obviously reached the minimum requirement in terms of speeches, but people with lesser requirements can also help by being counters and timers and test speakers. How is the panel to be managed? Well, the panel will consist of the person's name, their club, contact details, and as I said, the list of roles that they would be willing to do. As I see it, only the area and division directors in each division would have access. So we're talking about 4 or 5 people. And it would operate as in, a lot of the time it's just area and division anyway who need to use this. But if a club, for example, wants a test speaker, they would ask their area director and say, is there anybody on that list who's willing to be a test speaker? And the area director looks at the list and gets them. Or if a club has only, let's say, a few members, maybe they have only 7 or 8 members, they can hold a contest, but they don't have enough judges or counters. They could ask their area director for help, and the area director would look at the panel and then rotate people around. And it's important to say we see this panel as rotating. So if there's 40 names on it, you literally go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and when you get to 40, you start again. You don't keep asking the first person all the time. You rotate it around. And obviously people can't always do it, so there's no obligation to do it. But you'd like to think that if you were available, you would. I see this panel lasting for a year, and then at the end of the year, it dissolves and maybe starts again the following year. What would we provide? Well, you've seen an example tonight, some training, a bit more detailed training perhaps on how to do the job, where to get all the information you need. And armed with this, if there's one person at least from each club, they can use that at club level to enhance the knowledge within the club on running contests. So thank you for listening. And sorry, I think I've gone a bit over time, but Brenda, back to you.
Thanks very much, John. If there are any questions?
Brenda, can I just go back and answer the questions that were asked previously? But if there are any other questions, you can.
Yes, of course, Asma.
Ask me. So one of the questions was, under what circumstances can a judge or other official at the club level participate as a contestant in a club contest within a different area? You can participate as long as you are not participating in 2 areas and 2 divisions. You can only go up 1 path, as I said previously. And then the second question by Margaret was, members joining since rollout of Pathways must be enrolled on Pathways. Is this correct? Pathways is our only educational program, and yes, they should be enrolled, but their only restriction on being on level 1 and 2 and having a certificate for level 1 and 2 is for the international speech contest. And those who were members prior to Pathways can take part even if not registered on Pathways. They can take part in humorous speech table topics evaluation even if they're not registered on Pathways, as long as they meet the eligibility criteria, as in they are a paid member and they are in good standing, the club is in good standing, or they are a new or dual or reinstated member, and they have to maintain their eligibility at all levels of the contest, so at club, area, division, district, international. In terms of the legacy program with the competent communicator, they need to be at least 6 projects completed of those competent communicators projects to be eligible for international speech. And there we go. Let's see if there's anything else. Okay, so for the competent communicator speech, if somebody's completed the legacy program, it only counts if they had completed those before the 20th of March 2018, because that was when Pathways was rolled out in our district. And then somebody said, I have already attended a hybrid club contest. Should this have been held exclusively online? Club contest is fine. Its area and above has to be on Zoom only. What else do we have? Judges should be anonymous if possible. Yes, very true. and eligibility is very important for all roles. And that's for judges as well, and I believe, and for contestants, and the renewals are due this Friday. So make sure your clubs have paid their dues and you're all in good standing before you continue with your area and division contest, if you have already held your club contest. Were there any other questions?
Thank you, Asma. Helen Dagnall has her hand raised.
Okay.
Yeah. Good evening, everyone. Yes, I did put a question in the chat. I don't know if you can see it, but I asked if the Chief Judge has to be from District 71, because I've asked somebody and they have accepted, assuming that it's within the rules. He's currently now in District 91. Does that make any difference?
I don't believe there is a rule to say that they have to be within this district.
They have to be within this district.
There's no rule to say they have to be.
Oh, there's no rule. Okay.
No.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Brenda.
Member Helen.
Sorry?
Once they're a paid member and they're not a contestant in District 91.
And they're a paid member within their own district, not within District 71.
No.
Okay.
Once they're
Thanks,
paid
Brenda.
masters.
Thank you.
There's an eligibility criteria within the rule book, and it does specify what they have to be eligible as. It doesn't specify which district they have to be from, or club or area.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Asma.
You're welcome. Anybody else on anything in the rule book? Test by knowledge. I think that's all we've got.
Can I ask one more question, please? Sorry,
Yeah,
Asma.
No, please go ahead.
Does the rule regarding the level 2 on pathways apply to corporate clubs as well as community clubs?
Yes. Yes.
So the same rules apply throughout?
The same rules apply throughout. There's nothing separate for corporate clubs.
Thank you.
So Brenda, is there anything else from yourself?
Just
Yes.
thank you, Asma.
Yes, it's important for everyone to read the contest rules. Go ahead, Paul. You can unmute yourself.
Thank you very much, Asma. I'd just like to draw attention to an aspect of the ethics in relation to judging. And to say that, in my opinion, and I think in the opinion of just about everybody, it would be completely inappropriate for anybody to judge if they had a personal relationship with one of the contestants. In other words, if they were, in any sort of a business relationship, a intimate relationship, if they'd had a major row with the person in the past, all of these things, judges are not meant to be in a position of being likely to have unconscious or conscious bias. So I have personally seen somebody be a judge while they were the mentor of one of the contestants. And I don't want to say I've seen this more than once, but I was the counter, and it was a horrific thing to discover when you knew stuff. So it's really, really important to be able to say I'm not eligible to judge in this contest because I have heard this speaker speak several times. That's another factor to be taken into consideration. If you've heard one speaker speak several times and none of the other speakers speak several times, it's difficult to avoid being unduly influenced by expectations of the speaker's performance from the past. So I'm Paul and I'm done speaking. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
That makes a lot of sense. So when you're running a contest, especially at area and division, if someone from a club is competing, try to have judges from the other clubs in the same area. I know you have to have equal, and that's why you have to have equal number of judges from each one, but someone that's not related to the person who has a relationship closer than just being a club member. Yes, John? Conroy?
Yeah, I think that's very desirable, and I applaud Paul for bringing it up, but I don't think there's a rule anywhere that forbids that.
No, I will double check.
John, in relation to that, if you read the ethics statement on the declaration that judges are required to make, I think you'll see that the spirit of that ethical declaration would preclude somebody from judging somebody with whom they had a personal relationship. It's just,
yeah. No, I mean, I would agree with you, but at the end of the day, you know, ethics are, you know, people interpret things differently. And I think where that's not specified, I wouldn't be going accusing people of being wrong if, you know, they decided otherwise.
John, it is explicitly stated in the ethics statement. It's not in the rules because it is in the ethics statement. I refer you to that. Please consult.
I'd like to get and hear a definition of that from headquarters. Just is their reading of it the same as your reading of it? I'm just questioning it because
John, it's plain English. It's plain English. Honestly,
well, if it's down to definition, it's never plain English, Paul. You know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Asma, can I pose a question, the one that I'm not sure of, even though I probably should be? If you have 4 clubs in an area, and if 3 of those clubs have turned up with 2 judges each, and the 4th club either has 1 judge or no judges, in what circumstances then can you continue with the judging? Because that club doesn't have 2 judges of its own. Can you nominate a judge from another area or an outside area to represent them?
You can use judges from an outside area, but the clubs that are representing as judges, so you have to have an equal amount. So if you've got 2-2-2, and also 2-2-2, and then one club only has 1, I would suggest at the area you have to have 5 judges at the most. Well, at the minimum, sorry. So you take 1 and then try to get 2 judges from outside, or 1 judge from an outside club. And so drop each club down to 1 judge and get 1 from outside your area. But the rule book does say as in so far practical. So if it's not practical to do that, then you can, but just try to make sure that your clubs are equally presented as judges, because you don't want to give that unconscious bias to 1 club because they will have 2 judges.
Yeah, yes, I understand that, yes, but we've had situations in the past where, in fact, the other clubs are now at a disadvantage because you have fallen down to, you know, less judges. So you end up with a more potentially skewed result. The more judges you have, the better. That's why they would recommend 2. So when 1 club at the very last minute sometimes either shows up with no judges or 1 judge, well, it's a difficult situation, to be honest.
Yeah, and I think that's why the rulebook says insofar practical, because sometimes it is that last minute drop, and if the judge drops out last minute for whatever personal reason, then unfortunately there's not much you can really do about it, because you can't really pull a judge from a different area on the last minute if it's on the contest day. But if you know previously, you can plan for equal number of judges from each club. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
I've also had questions from some areas as well, in case anyone's thinking. So if you've got a mixture of community clubs and corporate clubs, and your corporate clubs decide not to compete, it is if you've got 4 or more clubs, sorry, if you've got 4 or less clubs in your area, you can have 2 contestants go. Sorry, let me start that again. If you've got 4 or less clubs in your area, each club can have 2 contestants move to area to compete. But if you have 4 or more clubs in good stand, no, more than 4 clubs in good standing, then you need to only have 1 contestant proceed to the area, even if that 1 club or 2 clubs as corporate clubs or community clubs are not competing. You can still only put 1 person to the next round from club to area. I hope that makes sense.
Asma, I have a question or an observation about the numbers of judges that you mentioned a few minutes ago about having equal numbers. One of the things that I do, even at club level, is to have local judges, or at area level, for example, or division level, is to have equal numbers, but always have people from outside of the district or outside of the division. Because the more judges you have, the better, as John mentioned, but also you run the risk in the virtual contest of having judges that may need to recuse themselves because they cannot judge the contest fairly if they themselves have been disconnected for a certain amount of time from hearing or seeing the contestants. And that is a particular issue in the virtual contests that everybody should be mindful of. I would never go in with a contest, an online contest, with 5 or 6 judges only. It's just taking too much of a risk.
Yeah.
Thanks.
No, thank you, Nick. And I think you do need to have, it's good to prepare backups for every role, especially when you're doing it on Zoom. I understand in person, people have to travel, you still have that same conflict that some people might not attend, but not. But on Zoom as well, that if you have more, and if you follow what John already explained to us, if you have more judges than you need, you will have a better outcome as well of your contest, because more people are judging and you'll get a less bias in your results.
Martin, you have a question?
Yes, I do. I've just going to check with Asma about the number of people who can go from the club to the area contest, because I've just been to a hybrid contest where I believe they've got 3 clubs in their area and they've only put 1 person forward. And it sounds as if, from what you said, that it might be practical for them to put 2 people forward.
They can put 2 people forward. The first and second place can go forward, and then if they've got 5 contestants, the first and second place can't make it, then you go to 3rd place, and then you go down the ranking order.
That's what I thought. Okay, thank you for the clarification.
You're welcome. So, for example, if you have only 3 contestants and neither of the 3 club contestants can make it to area, then unfortunately, if you run that contest, nobody can go forward if none of them can make it to the next area or next level up.
Asma, could I add a point just to clarify maybe on that? Martin, you said 3 clubs and they have, let's say they have only put 1 name forward. If for some reason 2 of those clubs put 2 names forward, but the 3rd club doesn't or can't field the 2nd candidate, are we saying that then the contest still goes ahead with 2 from 2 clubs and 1 from 1 club?
Yes. Yeah. So if the clubs have already ran their contest and they've only had 1 speaker, but they ran an official contest, they can still only put that 1 person forward. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Elizabeth?
Thank you, Madam PQD. I have 1 comment and a question for both Asma and John. John, first of all, I think your idea is very inspired and I hope you're going to progress it. I think it will do tremendous things for the district. And then my question is, most judges, particularly at club level, people get sort of, hauled into being a judge with a short briefing and very little training. What, as the district's chief judges, are you two going to do to improve this state of affairs?
Okay, thank you, Elizabeth. I'll take that question because I was going to hold you for a lot longer here tonight and try and get more of you here. But basically we'll get feedback, but my idea would be that we would go into more detail on how to judge and how to run a contest, particularly how to judge, and maybe have a little bit of role playing where we have a couple of judges voting on a candidate and then let everyone else see did they agree or not with it. But normally what happens in a contest is the results are just announced and no one explains why they've voted for something. So if we got 2 or 3 judges to explain why they voted in using the sheet a certain way, people would understand. And, you know, if we have that, then we should get a more balanced view, because like I said, some people put an awful lot of emphasis on one part of a person's speech. If they like people who are in a suit, they'll suddenly give half the thing to the suit, not the speech. And, you know, I think experienced judges would help with that. I'm keen to do something like that. I would, you know, welcome feedback, and if we get enough, we will run a further session on this. Martin, do you?
Yes, I was just going to come back on that, because for example, in some contests, I've seen what appears to be a favouritism in terms of speaker order. In other words, the first speaker or the last speaker may seem to get higher points that don't appear to be justified from you know, from the judges overall. It's very difficult to be specific because obviously you don't have sight of the ballots. But how can you just comment on that and let us know what methods there are to try and help to avoid that kind of judge bias?
Well, it's honestly very difficult if you're at a contest and there's 10 speakers, and by the time you get to the 10th one, you know, you're mentally shattered. You just have to try and, as I said, use the technique of folding it so that you don't see the points from the previous ballots, so that each one you're taking on in their own right. And the reason I did the presentation the way I did by showing the blocks on the form is that you should concentrate on each area and say, what am I giving in that area? You may be the type of person who always, you know, if there's 20 points, you'll always give 16 to 20. You never go down. But if you're consistent, if it's always 16, 17, 18, whatever it is, use your own criteria, it'll still be okay at the end. Yeah, how you make sure that you sit through 10 candidates and do it fairly, you know, it's literally, you know, be prepared. Don't rush into the contest. Try to get a good night's sleep the night before. Remember that your vote is extremely important, and, you know, it's very critical that you stay with it all the way through. That's all I can say.
I think it's important to bear in mind that you should be judging the speech that is presented to you at the contest, rather than judging on the basis of your knowledge of a particular contestant, if that makes sense. So you should judge the speech that is presented to you at the particular contest. In relation to the point that was made a while ago about judges judging in a contest where they may know a contestant, they may be related in some way to the contestant. I know it's a habit that's arisen in one of the clubs that I'm a member of, whereby we have sisters, we have siblings, we have husband and wife, and we just don't have judges that are related. It's a practice that's built up in my own club, but each club can decide really how to appoint judges to their contest. There was a question asked a while ago in the chat about any specific rules around technical failures. Asma, would you like to take that question, please?
Yeah, so there is one rule in the rule book, so you can find that on page, let me just tell you what page it's on page 15. So it states, in the event of technical failure of the signal or timing equipment, a speaker is allowed 30 seconds or extra overtime before being disqualified. It doesn't say anything else about technical failures, but if you are on Zoom, there is some guidance, I believe, on how to run successful contests on Zoom, and you can set your own criteria, but you must announce that at the beginning. So for example, if someone's Wi-Fi or broadband goes off during the contest, you can give them 2 minutes to rejoin the meeting to continue their speech where they've left off. If they're struggling to have their video on, you can allow someone to compete with their video off. You can give them 3 chances, you can give them 1 chance. It's up to you what the technical rules that you apply. I think there is some rules or guidance from Toastmasters International about the Zoom contest. I think I did provide the link to that in the slides.
I think sorry, Asma, I think in reality, districts have come up with their own interpretation of the Zoom. I know we did in District 71 back in May 2020, etc., where we actually had a whole list of things for protocols and so on. It's really important that, for example, at obviously a club level, the clubs can do what they want, but try and get some sort of uniformity for area and division as well, in order to make sure it's fair for everybody.
Yeah, I will check the slides again, but if I haven't got a link to the Zoom etiquette for our district, I will put that in there before sending the slides out.
Sorry, I'm just saying that if you want to talk to me offline about any of this, then for Asma and John, I'm available to you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Nick. There's a question in the chat about conflict of interest, and wouldn't there be an opportunity to protest? The only people, sorry, Asma, go ahead.
No, you go ahead, finish the question, sorry.
That was the question.
Oh, that was the question, sorry, sorry, apologies. So if there was an issue around conflict of interest, would there be an opportunity to raise that as a protest? Well, if it's not in the rule book, we can't really protest against it, that's not in the rule book. So, no. And it's not in, and I think John, oh, sorry.
Well, I think one of the things when we were going through the rules, an important thing we had spent a lot longer going through the rules than we have tonight. And I was beginning to wonder, could you ever decide? But there is a point where the contest is over. When the contest, I think, is adjourned, it's over. So it's the old thing about the referee's decision is final. So it does end. But I think challenges must be made before that decision happens. But once the contest is over, as far as I know, the result stands.
Once the contest is adjourned,
Yes.
the results stand. There's no conflict after that. I think the only time you can perhaps disqualify someone is if you find out that they're ineligible or they haven't met the ineligibility criteria. But in all fairness, you should be checking that before the contest starts to make sure the contestant is eligible and they have the clubs in good standing, they're in good standing, and if it's international speech, they're on the right levels, etc. So you should be checking those before.
And just one further point, only the contestants and judges can offer a protest to the chief judge or contest chair.
Yes, as an audience, you cannot. Any other questions?
I don't see any more at this stage, Asma. I'd like to thank you all for your participation and for your attendance at the session this evening. I'd like to thank Asma and John for their presentations and for sharing their knowledge with us all. Thank you both very much. We will be in touch with you in relation to forming teams district-wide for the different roles that are involved in running contests, and the recording of this evening's session will be made available on the District 71 YouTube channel. With that, I'd like to bring this session to a close, and thank you again for your attendance.